Well, this is a developing design for the entrance to a wine tasting facility, and the designer is trying to add a little more drama and interest to the entrance to the building. And he has specified some rammed earth fill sections running at 120 degrees and filled with rammed earth, little plinth for some sculpture there, and planting of Xanthorrhoea is into the middle of that rammed earth space. So if I select that symbol, it's Xanthorrhoea creasii, the grass tree, a very sculptural and dramatic species to use. The designer wants to have mixed planting of kangaroo paws, a native to Western Australia, red and green varieties, and while GCAD Plus has a tool for filling a closed poly line, let's demonstrate GCAD Plus and fill a closed polyline with a symbol. The prompt says pick a symbol, and now pick the closed polyline. And our input distance, let's imagine that the specification for planting these is 500 millimeters, or half a meter apart. And at a patterning angle, that line that is drawn through here is at 120 degrees, so 120, and we hit enter, and there is the patterning angle in at an angle of 120. Let me just check this line. It's actually an angle of 150. So if I wanted my patterning angle like that, I would needed to have changed that patterning angle, but I digress. We want to put patterning in the spaces between the rammed earth filled, crushed dirt filled zones, and that leaves us with several zones that are a bit awkward to fill. And what I'm suggesting is that rather than use that tool to pattern quickly, you might want to put polar on. Let's look at the drafting settings. I've set a polar distance step of 500 and an increment angle of 30. It gives us a lot of angles in there. We can add others, but let's just set it at 30 degrees. What I can now do is zoom in on this space rather than draw a polyline around what is a little bit complex. That space is not too bad, but the area below here, I'd have to use a polyline with the arc option in order to fill it, and that can be a little tedious. With these settings for polar and step size of 500, we can simply select that symbol and copy it, click in the middle and just move it in the direction we want, and click, 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 and click. We are popping that planting in a zone like so, and we could even, and they're 500 apart. I'll check that in a moment, but I'll select that lot and copy that lot up here and to there and to that point there, and then it's just a matter of removing those symbols that are outside the zone of interest. So we'll delete those. So there's our planting done. Let me just check that when we go from there, whoops, we want the distance command from, so the center there to there, 500 is the distance. So there's the planting done. So we can populate a space with planting at the correct intervals really easily using those polar settings. Well, of course, we can save drafting time by using the mirror command. So if I select all of those zones like so, we'll hold our shift key down and remove that arc from the selection set, and also remove a polyline which is encompassing the area there. We can now right click. I think I'll remove those because we've put some Xanthorrhoeas in different places on the left hand side. So now I can right click and select mirror, and as my mirror line I can pick the center of that line there, and I'll just make sure with copy, and we do that, and there's our zone of planting in, and it's just a matter of adding a couple of extra lines to the end of that plan. You could even maybe leave the sculpture plinth there. That one should come to the front, and this one should also come to the front. Bring to the front, and there we are. So that's a very quick way of doing some planting patterning and using the mirrored command.